Field inspectors representing half a dozen agencies swarmed on the disaster scene today. The building detectives were searching for clues to the reason why the bargain center's roof collapsed. Meanwhile, state officials today warned the public of a possible new disaster danger. Firefighters hosed down the roof debris to keep potentially deadly asbestos fibers from blowing away. According to state labor officials, the collapsed roof contained cancer-causing asbestos, and rescuers who searched for victims were exposed to that carcinogen.
Exposure to asbestos causes primarily asbestosis, which is a thickening of the lung lining and shortness of breath. It does cause lung cancer. It causes a cancer called mesothelioma, which the only known cause is exposure to asbestos. Even a casual exposure to asbestos fibers can produce this cancer.
After more than a month of investigation, police haven't found the killer of Judy Weichert. They deny they're at a dead end, but do say they need more witnesses. So today they upped the reward money from $5,000 to $15,000. $10,000 of that is coming from the Oklahoma City Running Club. The rest is coming from the OSBI.
We've posted a reward of up to $5,000 for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons involved in this. It's at the request of the Oklahoma City Police Department, and this reward will be in effect for 90 days from today.
The 33-year-old Weichert was found stabbed to death and sexually assaulted on the morning of July 28th. Her body was found along the Northwest Highway near Sarah Road. Initial calls produced several hundred leads for police, but most have not panned out, and now they need more help.
Somebody had an opportunity to see something that occurred that morning. We'd like to talk to as many people who have any information about what may have happened out there on that street Saturday morning, July 28th, as possible.
McBride says police are especially interested in finding the owner of a faded or very light blue Volkswagen Beetle that was seen in the area. That includes any information on a car like that may have been traded, sold, or repainted in the last month. Jeff Fowler, News 4.
How y'all doing? What's been wrong?
Oklahoma City public school buses have never been in such good shape, according to administrators. There are some 250 buses transporting 16,000 students. With that many youngsters riding buses, safety is a main priority. Periodic and daily inspections are made on all school buses in use, and only models built after 1979 are put on the streets. Brakes are also replaced on every vehicle in service annually. School administrators are equally pleased with the quality of drivers they have this year. It's the other drivers on the road they are worried about.
Students don't always follow the rules and do what they should do. Sometimes they're late and they won't watch crossing the street. When they see their school buses there and they'll be running for the school bus, they won't watch for traffic. We've had several students struck by cars in that manner. If the patrons and the driving public would just watch out for school buses, it would help immensely.
Last year, Oklahoma City reduced the number of school bus accidents by 50%. It's one of the few school systems that can boast of never having a fatality. Administrators say the record can keep improving with good vehicles, good drivers, and good sense. Ed Stewart, News 4.
In their final plea before the jury, prosecutors said Larry Lewis Gilbert had ambushed Officer Ralph Courtney, firing his gun until the bullets ran out, and they asked that Gilbert be given life in prison. For an hour and a half, the jury that Friday had convicted Gilbert deliberated on how long he should spend in jail for shooting a police officer. Gilbert's victim sat alone in the courtroom. Ralph Courtney was waiting with others to hear what price his attacker would pay.
We, the jury, find defendant Larry Lewis Gilbert guilty of shooting with intent to kill after former conviction of a felony and fix his punishment at 50 years in prison.
What was the end for Larry Gilbert is the beginning for Officer Ralph Courtney, who is back on his Capitol Hill beat, but still recovering from his gunshot wounds. Courtney says he is ready to get on with his life and thinks today's decision was the first step.
I'm ready to start over. I'd like to forget it all. It's been a kind of a tough time for me. He's ruined his life. He's messed up a lot of other people's. He's hurt his family and he's hurt mine. And, I'd say that he got what he had coming.
Even so, the memories of that February night when he nearly died don't go away so easily. They will remain long after Larry Lewis Gilbert goes to jail. But for Courtney, today's decision makes living with it a little easier. Jeff Fowler, News 4 in South Oklahoma City.
It's much more comprehensive than the one we have. If you'll
Is that healing compared to several?
I don't really care. I mean, I've looked at
As one, the Bob team.
fire prevention section of it, and I can read you what drilling sites within the city limits shall conform with such requirements as may from time to time be issued by the fire department. That's kind of open-ended, and I'd like to see at least if we did adopt an ordinance that had that broad a language in it, I would like to see the fire department.
We can only hold one thought in our mind at a time. And if that thought is negative, then it's just like stepping on a garden hose. You stop the flow. Okay? We're talking at a rate of 400, 500, 600 words a minute. If we're thinking of a negative thought, we're stopping the very process which will help us to get to our goal. If we control the thought, it'll also help us just go right towards it. That much easier, that much faster.
development drive. Jean Gunderson is their assistant.
People that will be coming through the doors here in just a few months. Mary Catherine, I thank you very much for this, and Dorothy. We're awfully proud of this moment, and I know you all are too, or you wouldn't be here.
It started in the lower floor of the Cambridge Inn here at 4800 South I-35. It started in the lower deal, and they got a housekeeping area both up and down, and it traveled from one floor to the next, and almost got into the attic on us.
Well, I've never looked at this position as being a career-type position. I looked at it as an opportunity to be of service to the public for a period of time during my career, and felt that the appropriate time would be during the one term of the President.
When the liquor by the drink issue passed last night, it meant very little in reality to most local bars. They'll simply get the chance to do what they're already doing and have been doing for years, serving liquor. And that was the biggest fear of liquor supporters, that voters in the state's big cities just wouldn't care. But apparently many did. And after all the votes were counted, some supporters saw something else in the results, about the power of the church to influence moral issues like this.
I'm opposed to anybody trying to vote in a small committee and say, well, this is the moral code that everybody's going to follow, and we're going to, by golly, see to it. We'll force it down their throats with all the money it takes. Voters proved yesterday that they're not going to have their morals dictated to them by somebody else.
As if to point out what they see as the hypocrisy of the current laws, there was no shortage of mixed drinks as supporters watched the results come in last night. But perhaps no one here was happier than Sheraton hotel manager Pete Winter, who had his own problems with the liquor laws just 4 days ago.
An officer came in about 9:15 and asked the cocktail waitress for a drink, and he was served. And he wrote her up and said, you know, don't get worried about this, just you have to go to court, just give it to your lawyer. And he walked out.
But for some counties, a vote last night means the confusion over liquor laws and enforcement will soon be over. And as one supporter said, it was just time for a change. Jeff Fowler, News 4.
Citizens out of every What you'll do is just, after, like I said, I'll give you a cue word. This is one drive that helps 47 agencies. You give one time, and the money goes into 47 agencies in Oklahoma City. It does not go out to other states. It stays right here in Oklahoma City for the people here.
And it was being used in large groups, a lot of the so that's why I said earlier that no one program does it all. You have to be having some set values and rules of groups. I think you can identify those. Certainly kids that come from a home.
The single most effective tool in terms of trying to get drug abuse under control is working at the grassroots level. You know, the government can pay people to do something. The government can have a program, but it still is not as effective as a neighbor, as a peer, as a family member, working with the individual that has a drug problem. And that's what our volunteer organizations are doing. That's what groups like Chance for Change are doing, and that's why I think it's so effective.
Patterson gave the impression of a man in way over his head as he described his first contact with the loan officers at Continental of Illinois. He told the jury it was the first time I had been to Chicago, and only the second time I'd been on a big plane before. Under examination from his attorney, Burke Bailey, Patterson told of numerous occasions when he invested his own money in the failing bank. Mrs. Patterson sat in the gallery as her husband detailed how he lost $1 million his wife had inherited from her grandfather. The bank officer had taken the $1 million to purchase Penn Square stock. When asked if there was any left, Patterson lowered his head and with a crack in his voice said, "No, I'm broke." When asked what he was doing now, Patterson broke down and cried again. He said, "I'm mowing lawns, painting houses, and installing sprinkler systems." The former banker told the court that without help from his in-laws, his family couldn't eat. Burke Bailey's final question to his client was, "Did you purposely ever deceive or defraud Penn Square Bank or its customers?" An emotional Patterson responded, "No."
The mortgage loan program was made for people like Vicki Warner. She's a single mother of 2 living in a rent house. She's never owned a house before, but she's saved up for years hoping to buy one someday. That day seemed years in the future before she heard about the low-interest mortgage money. The program allows first-time home buyers to borrow money at a low rate of just under 11%. Vicki Warner waited in line for a full day to apply, but she says it's worth it.
Well, if we get the bond money, yes, it will be, because, you know, that cuts down a house payment for the size house that I'm getting almost $100. So, you know, that makes me able to afford something a little bit nicer.
69,000 sales price.
Others who began the process today have similar hopes. Hopes that may be fulfilled since mortgage officers across the state received $200 million to loan out. And many say with that kind of money involved, this program will help more than just the home buyer.
They're going to be buying homes that are on the market, which will release those buyers to step up and buy a little bit bigger home. It's going to, I think it's a boost to the building economy. Definitely.
But Vicki Warner doesn't care that much about benefits to the construction business. She just hopes the new mortgage money will make her family's home-owning dreams come true a few years early. Bob Donaldson, News 4.
We have now reduced some numbers of prisoners.
7,053.
Relationship problem with the down there. I have met with the editor. I don't think that kind of message is automatically there. I do know that people can construe it that way and try to make it appear that way, and I would hope that they would not do that, and it would not be encouraged that people would view it that way.
Wednesday, September 12th, at Small's Quick Stop, located at 1717 Northwest 16th. At approximately 1:30 in the morning, 17-year-old John Flowers, the store clerk, walked outside the building to dispel a group gathered in the parking lot.
Y'all get on home, it's late.
As he was talking to the group, he was approached from behind by two Mexican males. As one of the Mexican males pulled out a knife, he fatally stabbed 17-year-old John Flowers to death. Leaving the dying victim on the pavement, they quickly walked away. The suspect that did the stabbing is described as a Mexican male with short hair, 18 to 21 years old, approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall, and weighing 150 pounds. He wore blue jeans and no shirt. It is possible that this suspect has a tattoo on his chest. The second Mexican male did not participate in this stabbing and is not currently being sought by the Oklahoma City Police Department. If you have any information about this homicide or the suspect in this murder, call Crimestoppers at 235-7300. All callers will remain anonymous, and you could earn a $2,000 reward. I'm Detective Bill Hanneman for Crimestoppers.
You know, I'm sure you'll agree there's nothing much fun about having the chicken pox, the flu, or any other viral syndrome. But, you know, for the most part, they're not very serious diseases. On the other hand, there are some complications that can arise, one of which is really significant, is Reyes Syndrome. Now, that can be life-threatening. What generally happens is on about the 3rd or 4th day of the flu, when the child should be getting better, the youngster takes a turn for the worse. And this child may start to vomit, become confused, or even disoriented. Now, if this happens, you need to take some action. Get to a hospital quickly.
The treatment of Reyes syndrome is really supportive. There's no specific antibiotic or drug that can be given to cure a patient of Reyes syndrome. They must be hospitalized, watched very carefully, and then all of the side effects must be managed.
Now, you're probably aware that Reyes syndrome has been observed to occur in a few children who received aspirin to decrease the fever of some illness, especially chickenpox and the flu. Now, we don't understand this association with aspirin, but just the same, I think you ought to play it safe.
Other drugs can be utilized to control fevers, such as acetaminophen.
Fortunately, Reyes syndrome is rare, but it does occur, and it usually occurs when a child has some kind of viral illness like the flu and taking aspirin. But you can have Reyes without taking aspirin. The bottom line is, if a child with a viral illness starts getting a lot sicker, it's time to see a doctor. I'm Dr. Red Duke. You know, there's not anything particularly unusual about having a cold. A kid wouldn't be a kid if he didn't have one every now and then. They get a little messy sometimes, but it usually doesn't amount to very much. But sometimes, you know, it can get to be a real problem, and you can lead into some other complications, and you need to be on top of those. The most common complications of a cold is either an earache or a sinus infection. The real trick is to know what to recognize or look for when you really ought to take your child to a doctor. Now, I really don't think you ought to go to the doctor every time the child has an earache or a little sore throat. But if it's severe and associated with fever, it's time to go.
In addition, an illness that may last longer than 1 to 3 days, which is the usual length of a cold, and illnesses associated with temperature elevations that are a little higher than, say, 100 to 101.
Now, I'm sorry to say we still don't have a cure for the common cold. But a whole lot of the complications that can occur as a result of a cold can usually be treated with antibiotics. But interesting enough, not all of these infections need to be treated with antibiotics. More than likely, watched carefully, they'll go away by themselves. You know, I don't know anything more difficult than trying to take care of a child that's just a little bit sick. And we tell you to give them fluids, and that's a good idea. But I don't know how to tell you to get them to be quiet. We say do that, but I don't know how. The really important issue is if they get a lot sicker, then that's time to see a doctor. I'm Dr. Red Duke. You know, there's a real tendency in most of us to want to reach out and pet animals, be they dogs, cats, and in some instances, wild animals. Well, let me encourage you to exercise a little restraint. Don't take a chance on being scratched or bitten by an animal that you don't know. Rabies, for the most part, is primarily a disease of wild animals like bats and skunks. But stray dogs and cats are also prime candidates. Fortunately, most animals with rabies will show some signs of the disease.
They'll be frothing at the mouth. It may attack a person, whereas normally it would not attack a person, and appear as if it's acting like something is seriously wrong with the animal. Other animals will become very docile and run and hide.
If you see an animal that fits this description, It's time to get away as soon as possible. But if you accidentally get bitten, it's time to get to a doctor immediately.
If a person is bitten by a rabid animal and is given appropriate rabies vaccination, the chances of that person's survival are almost 100%.
I could not be more serious about the significance of getting treated early. If you don't start the rabies vaccinations shortly after you've been bitten, you could actually develop the disease. Should this happen, this is serious, because we don't have a cure for the disease.
Now let me emphasize again, just stay away from all wild animals and stray cats and dogs, and get your dog or cat vaccinated each year. If they're outside at all, they're exposed to a lot more rabies than you might imagine. Take care of yourself and your pet. I'm Dr. Red Duke.